Welcome again. Thank you for coming. I'm Doris Wise-Montrose. I'm president of Children of Jewish Holocaust Survivors. I'm going to, my friend Steve Goldberg is going to introduce Abe Sion, our speaker tonight. But first I want to draw your attention to my lovely handout that I worked hard on all day. April 23rd or 24th, we don't know yet which day, we're going to host Michael Ledeen, who's the expert on Iran. And the subject, exactly what he'll be talking about, we'll know that night, because things change all the time. And on the second page, I have a very important article that I did not write, but I am handing it out, on how there is no such people as a Palestinian people, and that they should be referred to as Arabs. It will change, I believe, the entire dialogue of what's going on in Israel. Because Arabs don't need another state. So that's all I'm going to say on that one. And then the third one is one of several articles that are going around the internet today, 4 of which were written by my friend Rick Richmond on this new documentary called The Gatekeepers, which is an anti-Israel film that, of course, the Oscars picked up on right away. It's unbelievable to me that a Jewish Israeli would take money and go out and make a film, omit things, lie about things.
Lie?
Pardon me?
Nothing.
Okay. And of course the Oscars jump on it because it's, how great can that be? A Jewish Israeli making an anti-Israel film. I mean, it's so delicious to them. So, okay, so that's my soapbox. So, my good friend Steve Goldberg is the National Vice Chairman of the Zionist Organization of America, ZOA. He is the U.S. representative on the Executive Board of World Likud, and he's a member of the Extended Executive Board of the World Zionist Organization. He has also participated in Professor Zion's conference on media and, Steve, what's it called? Steve?
Law and mass media.
That. Which is I believe it's a 2-day conference at Ariel University that Abe and I have been talking about bringing here to UCLA, which would be fantastic. So, and we'll continue to work on that and keep you posted. So I now give you to Steve.
Thank you, Doris, and thank you for hosting it. This is an important event. First, about Abe Sion. He's done something that I, as a lawyer, know is virtually impossible or intolerable. Somehow he did it. He went to 2 different law schools and graduated from both of them. One in Hebrew University and the other in Jerusalem, and the other Cambridge University in England. 2 languages, 2 law schools. I don't know how he did it. Very impressive. I could never do that. He's also been Deputy Attorney General in Israel. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Israel Defense Forces, where he served as a judge for 17 years down in Gaza. He's been on the radio on a regular basis in Israel, and he is the head of the Center for Law and Mass Media at Ariel University, which is doing critically important work. Ariel University is the newest university in Israel. It is a fantastic school, and it's doing groundbreaking work. It was very controversial because it's in Samaria, and it faced a lot of opposition to become a full-fledged university, but it finally happened. What Professor Sion is doing at the Center of Law and Mass Media is trying to educate students on defending Israel against the bias in the mass media and the delegitimization, and in particular to combat the insidious danger of the two-state solution, which is now just pervasive throughout the international community. The people, they cling to it like it's a security blanket, and the professor is working hard at this center to do academic research and to educate people and to educate people to go out into the world to learn to combat this. He's had annual conferences, a lot of research papers, and again, that's very important work he's doing. He'll come here now to fill us in on recent events in Israel, the threats facing Israel, the import of the election, and what Israel can now do to face the various attacks that are going to come at it more heavily than ever, now that people perceive an opportunity to pressure it. So with that, it's my privilege to introduce Professor Abraham Sion.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's again a pleasure to be here. I've been here a few months ago. And thank you, Doris, for inviting me again. Doris was mentioning this film, that the Gatekeepers. Maybe I'll start with that, because I saw it yesterday. And I made it a point to go and see it when the producer, well, the director, was to answer questions from the audience. I saw the film. It's very anti-Israel. I would say anti-Semitic. But he did it in a very subtle way. He took the 5 heads of Shabak. He interviewed them for 75 hours. That's what he said. And he gave us only 1 hour. And this hour was exactly what he wanted to purvey to the public, to the audience. First of all, he did not say that the film was a political film. He put it as a documentary film. Secondly, he did not say that 3 out of the 5 heads of Shabak are today members of parliament in Israel, and they are in the opposition, like Perry and like others. And then, when he gave the picture, he showed the Israelis like the Nazis. And there was a certain sentence that was said that the Israelis actually are acting there as the Germans were acting in Holland or in Czechoslovakia or in other places. The film is anti-Israel, and when we're talking about defamation, and we're talking about public diplomacy, we should start with certain people on the left of Israel, the liberal side, as so-called, and try to tame them in a way that Israel is not a place where they can defame and libel the country and the people very easily. I also saw that the film was not only got grants from organizations who were anti-Israel organizations, but they got money also from the Israeli government. And that's one of the things that one cannot perceive, because Israel believes in democracy, it believes in the freedom of speech, and therefore we should help everyone who wants to make a film, not knowing that the outcome of the film can be so bad. But anyway, we'll go to, I'll start with saying that I come from Ariel University. Actually, I was head of department in Tel Aviv University, which is 5 minutes walk from my home. And I left Tel Aviv University to go to Ariel at the time when it was just a small college, hardly noticed in the Israeli academic world. And my main intention was to establish a center which was missing in Israel. That is research on the Arab-Israeli conflict. I would say that if this center was at the time of the Oslo Agreement, maybe the Oslo Agreement would not have been signed. Because our research shows that the Arabs did not want peace, do not want peace, and will never want peace. Because if the Arabs wanted peace, they could have had a state many years ago, when Ehud Barak, the prime minister then, almost gave them all the 1967 victories that we had, just for the sake of peace. And they rejected it. Arafat rejected it. Now, why would he reject it? His answer was, when he was asked, he rejected it because of two things. First of all, he said, we are getting a state, but we want all our people from all over the world, all Palestinians, and I agree with Doris, we should not call them Palestinians, but I still don't have another word for them. Because they're not just Arabs, they're Arabs who live in Israel. In Hebrew, it's very easy to say, Arvei Eretz Israel. In English, it's very difficult to translate it. But let's call them, for the sake of this speech, as Palestinians. He said, I want a state, and I want all my people to go not to my state, but to your state. Now, why would somebody, can you imagine that Israel would have said, we want a state, but we want all our people to go to America? That doesn't make sense. So, actually, what he was thinking is that he's going to have 4 states in the end that are going to combine to one state. One state is in Jordan. In fact, 85% of the Arabs of Jordan are Palestinians. Another state is in Gaza. Today, Gaza is operating as a state. It's not under occupation. It's a state. And the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, all the world sees it as part of a Palestinian state. So what's left? The green line. So if you bring in 500,000 refugees, there's no Israel. And they're working on it. Believe me, they're working on it. The Arabs of Israel are working on it. The Palestinians are working on it. And it's only we who have to be on guard that we would not say that because of democracy we're going to lose the country. Because in Israel, you can think what you like, and you can say what you like. More than any other country in the world. More even than the United States. You can say anything you like, but you cannot use arms, and you cannot be violent, and you cannot threaten. So if you work hours on hours, and make more testaments and more trying to persuade people. So the best thing of Israel is to have the land of all its people, to abolish the law of return, or to apply, excuse me. This was not expected, really. I got a phone, I don't know how to use it, really. It always rings when it doesn't have to ring. Anyway, so they are making testaments and all sorts of papers to persuade the left, or the extreme left in Israel, that the best thing for Israel, the most moral thing in Israel, is to abolish the law of return, or to apply it to the Palestinians as well. This is democratic talk. What can you do about it? So this is also one of the things that we should be very, very careful about. And I'm happy to say that a few days ago, I received an email from from Ariel University telling me that I can say openly that it's no longer Ariel University Center, it's Ariel University. And this was after a lot of problems that the left has caused us, also the academic left, because they said, look, if you have a university in the West Bank, then the whole world is going to be against our universities. What they forget is that those professors who said that are the ones who went all over the world to say boycott Israel and boycott the academia in Israel. They were the ones who started the whole thing. And our main problem is, and this is something that we started research on, it's something that we cannot understand. How come that from the Jewish people we have so many anti-Semites, so many people who are working against the interests of Israel more than any nation in the world? In every nation you have people who think otherwise. I don't want to call them traitors, but every nation you have a few traitors, but not such a quantity of people who work against the interests of Israel, which is really the most basic or basis for all Jews all over the world. I cannot even imagine what would happen to Jews all over the world if Israel would not exist. And the question is, how do we combat Arab propaganda? When the Oslo Agreement was signed, we gave the Palestinians the right to use electronic lines for to have radios and television and also all sorts of other connections. When this happened, I knew at that time where this is going to lead, because in a very short while they started delegitimizing Israel and saying all sorts of false truths or false sentences about them and about the Jewish people in Israel. For example, they would say that they are the descendants of the Philistines without winking an eye. They would say that the Jews have no rights, never had any rights on Jerusalem. And they would say that the holy places in Israel are now under siege, that the Arabs cannot go there. I remember I was in a conference a few years ago in Spain, where we had a debate on the three monotheistic religions, the Jewish, the Muslim, and the Christian religion. And when my turn came to speak, I said that never before was access to Jerusalem so free as it is today. And one of the delegates, one of the people who were representing the Arab side, and he was a Palestinian from the PLO, he said, "You're lying." And I was surprised that in an academic debate somebody would say, "You're lying." So I said, "Why am I lying?" And he said, "Because I live in Al-Azariya, which is 5 minutes drive from Jerusalem, and I couldn't go to the Mount Temple. I couldn't pray in Mosque Al-Aqsa." I said, "But last Friday, there were 50,000 people on Mount Temple, 50,000 Islamic people praying on Mount Temple. How can you say that?" He said, "Yes, they infiltrated the Israeli lines." I said, "What, 50,000 people infiltrated the Israeli lines?" He said, "Yes." And you know, some of my colleagues from the Hebrew University and Tel Aviv University were shaking their heads in consent. What I say is that the way to combat Arab propaganda is to tell the truth. And if we do tell the truth, if we take the initiative to tell the truth, if we don't act on the defensive but on the offensive, then the whole thing can change tremendously. And that's what we are doing in Ariel University. When I came to Ariel, I actually established the Center for Law and Mass Media for the sake of researching into and finding out the conflict, the Arab-Israeli conflict. And there's a vacuum in that, because nobody really is researching into that. Nobody is trying to find out where Israel or where the Jewish people are going to be in 50 years from now, or 40 years from now, or even 20 years from now. Nobody knows. Nobody is trying to find out. And I think that this is a very important thing, because with all the turmoil in the Middle East, it is very important that we know which way to take. What is the track? If we know that there is a chance for peace, then maybe we should act in a certain way. If we know that there is no chance for peace, we should act in a different way. And the way we are acting so far is that part of the Israeli society, and this part is diminishing, but there is a part still strong in the Israeli society who thinks that the peace with the Palestinians is very much possible. And of course, this is a big mistake. Let me ask you, what is the fundamental sign of a country or a nation who is at war, and at a certain time they decide that they want to go for peace? The most fundamental thing is to teach the children that no more war and we are going for peace. And we should not have any animosity towards those who were our enemies in the past. This is what Israel did. But with the Arabs, it was very different. They taught their children from the age of 1 that the highest achievement that they can achieve is to blow themselves in buses and in cafes and in movie cinemas. Not to go to get a Nobel Prize, but to go and suicide bombers. And you see that it can be seen in films that the Palestinians themselves are showing, that those little children of 5 or 6 years old say, my brother blew up a bus in Tel Aviv and I want to do the same thing. And the mother says, if I had 7 children, I would have had all of them be suicide bombers. Now, is a nation like that going to do peace? They have any interest in doing peace? Not only that, but according to their belief, to the religious belief, to the extreme religious belief, is that all Palestine is a waqf. And a waqf means it is a sacred place and no Arab leader can give it up. So they cannot make peace. They cannot come to any terms, or it's difficult to get to any terms with them. And see what happened when the Hamas took control in Gaza. They stopped talking about peace. They say that they want to destroy Israel, and that's what they're aiming at. They're making it very open and very clear. So when we talk about how to combat Arab propaganda, is to tell all these truths. To show, for example, I never heard this from anybody, even Israelis, when they say occupied territory, and I ask the question, occupy from whom? There was never a Palestinian state. Jerusalem was never the capital of any other state in the last 2,000 years. Jordan occupied the West Bank illegally by an offensive launch against Israel, and it kept that area, it annexed that area, and no country in the world accepted that annexation, except for Britain and Pakistan. Pakistan was a Muslim state at the time. But Britain, of course, was the protector at the time of Jordan. But these were the two states. Even the Arab League did not accept that, did not recognize the annexation. So when they say it's occupied territory, the first question is, occupied from whom? Why did Jordan did not establish a Palestinian state in the West Bank, and why did Egypt did not establish a Palestinian state in Gaza? It was only Israel who did it. And Israel did it for peace, and it got terror in return. On the other hand, when we speak about occupied territory, and they tell us that it's occupied according to international law, I would ask an international lawyer, how come, under which law is the West Bank or Judea and Samaria occupied? Because just a few words of history and also international law. And I'm not talking about the Bible, which is another very important aspect. I am talking about international law. The Balfour Declaration was the beginning of establishing a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. That was the beginning, the modern beginning. The Balfour Declaration did not have any international aspect. It was very important, but not international. It was then confirmed in Samaria in 1922. That is the beginning of international law. When it was confirmed, then they gave the power to Britain. They gave it a mandate, and the mandate was to establish a Jewish home, a home for the Jewish people in Palestine. When I speak about Palestine, of course, I speak about west of the Jordan and east of the Jordan. All this they used to be called Palestine. At a certain time in 1922, Britain managed to get the acceptance of the League of Nations to tear Transjordan out of Palestine and to give it to a Hashemite prince in Saudi Arabia, and his descendants are until today. But the west of the Jordan was, according to international law, which was then confirmed in the League of Nations, and then afterwards in the Charter of the United Nations, it was supposed to be the homeland of the Jewish people. And the Jewish people, not only a homeland, but the British had to help the Jews to immigrate to Palestine. But the British went upon their words, and they regretted the fact, and they started having the white paper not to let the Jews come to Palestine at the time of the war. But this was, of course, against the mandate that the British had. The establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine was not to prejudice the rights, the civil rights of the Arab population in Palestine. That is all. That is all that they have. The Arabs in Israel have the rights, the civil rights, and I would say that the Arabs in Israel have more rights than the Arabs, not the Jews, the Arabs in any Arab state. And sometimes you hear people who are persecuted in Arab countries say, all we want is that you treat us as the Jews treat the Arabs in Palestine. So, telling the truth is very important. There is no occupation, and I would like to challenge anyone who says that there is occupation in the occupied territory in Judea and Samaria. It was occupied by the Jews. Another aspect of international law is that the Jordanians attacked Israel, and Israel was on the defense, and even international law is accepted that when there is a vacuum, when there is no man's land, when the land doesn't belong to any other state, and a state attacks another state, the state that is attacked has more rights than the state that is attacking. So, on the one hand, we say that according to international law, Israel is the owner of Judea and Samaria and the Gaza Strip. But even if we say that this is not correct, still the international law shows has a decision on that because Israel was attacked, it has more rights than any other country in the world. But on the whole, I would say that we should not only show what we have, but we should show what the Arabs have. What are the civil rights in the Arab countries? Because when the Arabs say that we are a state of apartheid, we should show the apartheid in the Arab countries. You know that the Copts in Egypt don't have any rights, almost any rights at all. They're the Christians, Arab Christians, and they don't have any rights. You know that in Bethlehem, Christians fled from there in the last 10-15 years because the Muslims are kicking them out, even under even under the eyes of the Israelis. This did not happen when Israel ruled that area, but now under the Palestinian Authority, they can do so. We should show how the Arabs treat their women. We should show what sort of civil rights they have. For example, if Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, says, I want all the West Bank without one Jew in the West Bank, what does that mean? Doesn't that mean that he's a racist? Can you imagine in Israel that they say, we want Bethlehem without an Arab? We had less care about the Jews of Gush Katif in Gaza than we have to Palestinians or to Muslims in Israel. No Muslim in Israel can be thrown out of the country, but we managed to take out 8,000 Jews from Gaza. This all can be shown in an initiative way, in an aggressive way, not in an intensive way, not in a defensive way. The trouble with us is, with the Israeli propaganda, and I would say also with the Jewish public diplomacy around the world, whether it's in the United States or in Britain, is that we always say, no, we are not an apartheid country. No, we have civil rights. No, what they are saying about this is not true. Instead of saying what they have, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with the other side. Take, for example, the refugee problem. Nobody made research how much money the Arabs spent on wars against Israel. How many refugees they could have settled with this money that has been spent on hatred and on wars and fighting. This is a very important factor, because the refugee problem now is in its 5th generation. This is the only refugee in the world, the only refugee problem in the world that has not been settled. After the Second World War, there were many refugee problems. There were many refugees, all Europe were refugees, and they were all settled within one generation. You don't have refugees who inherit being refugees. But, thank you. But this is problematic because this is going to slide. On the other hand, we never mention, almost never mention, that Israel had more refugees than the Arab had refugees. In other words, refugees from Arab countries who came over to Israel, their number was something like 850,000 at the time, while the number of the Arab refugees was around 600,000. The Jews in Arab countries left much more wealth and property than the Arabs left in Palestine. And yet we don't hear about the Jewish refugees, we only hear about the Arab refugees. Because the Jewish refugees were absorbed within Israel, and now they're part of the state of Israel. I'm one of them. But the Arabs kept the refugees for 5 generations. What for? To bring them back to Tel Aviv and to Acre and to Netanya and to the Jewish places. So the Arabs did not differentiate at all between Tel Aviv and Shechem, or Tel Aviv and Hebron, or Tel Aviv and Bethlehem. For them, all this is Palestine, and all this should be retrieved and got back. Also, another method, another way that we should take upon ourselves is to show what Israel is giving to the world and what all the Arab nations altogether are giving to the world. In agriculture, in startup, even in ammunition. The Kippat Barzel, that's Iron Dome. This is something that every country in the world needs it because of the missiles. And it's an Israeli-made thing. Actually, the United States doesn't have the know-how to do it. It's giving the money, a part of the money. But Israel is the nation that has achieved that.
Obama took credit for that.
Yeah, well. Let him help Israel and take all the credit. The trouble with Obama, with President Obama, is that there is a lot of friction. Even today, I'll talk about this in a minute. But let me tell you, for example, if we take agriculture, Israel's irrigation system, or know-how, is the best in the world. The Israeli cow gives more milk than any other cow all over the world. It gives over 10,000 liters, which is 2,500 gallons a year, while a cow in the United States gives only 9,000, and a cow in Japan gives only 7,000 liters. So when we speak about agriculture, and we speak about what an acre of land can give in agriculture, Israel has the highest know-how in the world, and it's producing, it's taking this into in China, in Africa, and in many other places to show how you can, from 1 acre, get 10 times more than any other place in the world. Sometimes even more than 10 times. Israel has the technology and the know-how and research of agriculture. If you take, for example, the startup companies, there are 857 startup companies in Israel working at the moment. And many countries in the world, especially the United States, are looking up to these startup companies. They want to buy them. I don't know whether you know Waze. Have you heard of Waze? Yeah. Waze is really a GPS in the iPhone. And an American company, it's an Israeli patent, and an American company wanted to buy for $500 million, and the Israelis said no. And they said, how much do you want? They said, $1 billion. And now they're negotiating for $800 million. So, I'm not talking about Nobel Prize winners. The Jews among Nobel Prize winners are the highest in the world, and in Israel we have already 6 or 7 Nobel Prize winners in such a small country. And while all the Muslim world, if you take all the Muslim world altogether, 1.3 billion, they have, I think, 1 or 2 Nobel Prize winners.
Including Arab.
Yeah, so there is a need for research, there is a need to investigate how to fight BDS, how to fight the boycott. What interests us most is the BDS in Western countries. We care less about all these Muslim countries because they will lift their hand even if somebody would say that now it's morning, they would lift their hand and say that's correct. But what's appalling is that Israel is in the front of the Western world against the Islamics, against the Islamist extremists. And even so, you can see that the Western world, except for 1 or 2 states like the Czech Republic and Panama, almost all countries voted for for Palestinian state, as an observer Palestinian state. And you would think that something is wrong. Something is wrong. The message is not going through. They don't know the facts, and they are acting according to interests without any morality. The trouble is with us. I must admit, the trouble is with us. And I've tried my best in the last few years, and I hope to try even more in the next few years, to convince the Israeli cabinet to put more money, to invest more money in public diplomacy. You know that public diplomacy today is about $8 million a year. It's less than a small company in the United States that invests in PR. It used to be 10 million, now it's 8 million. And don't think that all the 8 million are going for public diplomacy, because 6 million out of this 8 million are going on salaries. So we're left with 2 million. And I think that Israel should invest $3 billion a year out of a budget of $100 billion. I think Israel must invest at least $3 billion in public diplomacy. You don't get to the minds of the people easily. And particularly when you have some people, like the one who produced this film, this anti-Israel film, that is going to get an Oscar, I believe. It's because, as Doris said, it's anti-Israel. So I mean, either it's going to be nominated or it's going to have the Oscar, because it's against Israel. And as I said, he made it in a very short way, because he did not say the words himself, but he took it out of the heads of the Shabak, and he put all sorts of pictures around it that showed as if it is true. It is very important to have public diplomacy, or PR, that can show the morality of the fighting, the morality of the combat. It's worth at least a few divisions on the ground. Take, for example, the Goldstein report. The Goldstein report caused Israel to tie its hands and its legs in the next fighting against the Hamas. In fact, because of the Goldstein report, is it Goldstein? Goldstein. That's what because of the Goldstein report, Israel could not act, even in defense, as it should have acted otherwise. So there is a great importance, because then it's as if they have, by their way of putting things, they have an extra strength against Israel. Sorry?
It was proven false. The information that he was given was proven false.
Yeah, but this is always afterwards.
Yeah, he actually published.
It's like when they say in the papers that somebody raped somebody, and then they say, no, it's a mistake, but they won't write it in the last pages. And that's what happens usually. If you take the Adura report, you know the story of Adura. That was that boy who was caught in crossfire, and Israel was accused that it was the reason for his death. But again, I say, it was our mistake, because Israel admitted that it was the reason for his killing very early, even before investigation.
Right.
I can tell you that I was asked by the speaker of the IDF, by the spokesman of the IDF, that perhaps I would like to meet with foreign press to speak about Adura. And I said, with pleasure. Then he said, what do you think about the whole thing? And I said, listen, it's a big mistake that the IDF admitted the Adura case before even investigating. He said, oh, but we are a state, we cannot lie. I said, are you sure that the IDF killed Adura? He said, no, we can't be sure. I said, if you're not sure, then why admit before being sure? And when then, in the end, it was found out that the Israeli soldiers, from the angle that they couldn't shoot Adura, it was too late. And the damage was already done.
It was shown to be a lie, it was a hoax.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that Adura doesn't live today somewhere in France or in any other country. Nobody really knows the facts about it.
He's a murderer.
We had elections a few weeks ago in Israel. In Israel, we have the proportionate system. It's not like the majority system in America or in England. It's the proportionate system, which means that no votes are wasted. Almost no votes are wasted. So that's why we have so many political parties in Israel. I'm myself a member of the Likud party. I used to be the head of the academic division of the Likud party, which was, if I may say so, the strongest division within the party at the time. I'm talking about 10 years ago. But I know the Likud very well, and what happened was that the merge with Israel Beitenu was a mistake. It was known, and soon after that it was a mistake. But still it was a brilliant act, because there was a fear that Shimon Peres the president, might ask another leader of a party to form a government, like Tzipi Livni or like Yachimowicz. If the Labour Party, there was a possibility the Labour Party will come up to 20 members of parliament, and if they had 20 and the Likud had 27 or 28, then they might have, Shimon Peres might ask Yachimowicz to form a government. So they made this merger so that the Likud will come up with, Likud and Israel Beitenu were about 42 members of parliament. They went down to 31. That is the setback. But on the whole, the president did ask Benjamin Netanyahu to form the government. And now Benjamin Netanyahu is in the process of forming the next government. And I can tell you that this government the life of this government is not going to be easy, because Iran is still on the agenda, and Iran is a very serious problem. And the Palestinian problem is also on the agenda, and this hasn't been solved yet. I can tell you that the administration of Netanyahu was the first administration that started speaking about the rights of the Jews on Israel. Never before did they say that. Did we say that? Because it always said, we are looking for security. Are these borders secure or not secure? We never said that we don't want to withdraw from Hebron because Hebron is it has Jewish heritage, and we cannot do that. So this is a step forward, and I may say that we have, in the last 5-6 years, in Ariel University, after having 3 conferences, after asking cabinet ministers to take some of the courses and some of the lessons that we did give, this made an effect, and I think, if I may say so, I think that it contributed to the fact that cabinet ministers started thinking in the way not only of secure borders, but mainly of Jewish heritage in the Holy Land. All this research, conferences, public diplomacy courses, they need investments. They need quite a lot of funding. And we are trying to fundraise for these courses, the public diplomacy courses. We are trying to have the next generation be our ambassadors in everywhere they are, whether they go as students, postgraduate students to the United States or to Europe, or whether they travel, or whether they meet with they encounter with Palestinians. By the way, almost in every argument that I was there, I found that the Israelis were on the negative side, on the other side, not on the winning side. And these courses, the conference, the plan to change public opinion, or the public concept, or maybe the leaders' concept, whether in the United States and in Israel and other places, is of vital importance. So I'm hopeful, and I think that we all should all join in trying to contribute in any way possible to the to Israel and to the Jewish preserve in the Holy Land. Thank you very much.
We're going to take questions now. So I posit that the world doesn't care what Israel does, all the good stuff. I believe that it's based on Jew hatred. What do you say to that?
You believe it's based on?
Hatred of Jews. They don't care about all the medical stuff, all the Iron Dome, all the ways, all the apps, I don't think they care.
There is a great deal of anti-Semitism, and this anti-Semitism is cropping up again It reminds me of 1938. It reminds me of the Gathering Storm. And it's true that there is a lot of hatred against the Jews, against Israel, and a lot of jealousy. There is a lot of jealousy.
Yes.
If the Arabs say, look at the way we live, and look at the way they live, it's true. We live in houses, we live in apartments, we live in a wonderful surrounding, and they live in the mud. But they do that because they don't work, they do not have any achievements, and this is one of the things that shows the difference. So I agree with you. It is hatred, it is jealousy, but when we come to the achievements, most people, most countries appreciate that because they ask for Israeli know-how everywhere in the world.
Secretly.
They'll assume without saying thank you.
Okay, we're going to take questions. I'm going to walk around the microphone so she has it right now.
So the question is, I just recently saw a video that I probably should have seen a long time ago. Our daughter lives in the Gush, in Elazar, and I just saw the video about how that whole area was actually paid for with Jewish money in the 30s. And then in 48, during the war, there's the Nativa Hey, there were the 35 people who were coming in to try and help. They were murdered, and then it was taken away, and in 67 they got it back. So how do we prove to the world? This was, besides that was supposed to be, you're saying, part of Israel according to the Balfour Declaration, it was paid for, it was purchased fair and square. How do you take it away?
Well, this is one of the problems. This is one of the problems. If I would like to look at this from a legal point of view, lands that were purchased by Jewish money, whether from America, whether from England or Europe, and invested with the Keren HaKayemet in Israel. Then some of the leftists tried to incite Arabs. Why don't you go and live in those places? So one Arab decided he's going to do that. His name is Kardan. He asked to buy a house, of course with a subsidy, to buy a house within that Jewish entity in that settlement, in that place. They said, you can't go in because you're an Arab. And this is Jewish land. It was bought by Jewish money. So what does he do? He goes to the Supreme Court on a petition to say that this is inequality. And the Supreme Court says, yes, true, it is inequality, therefore we're going to force the Jewish settlement to accept him. And that's what happened. That is exactly what I'm talking about, the concept. The concept that is now in Israel, and also it divides the Jewish people in America, should change. I mean, there is a limit to what you can say about your enemy. To accept your enemy, it goes beyond the borderline of morality. So I agree with you, and I think this should change.
Yesterday I heard Dr. Mordechai Kedar speaking, who is the head of the Islamic Studies at Bar-Ilan University. And there are three
By the way, Mordechai Kedar, Dr. Mordechai Kedar is from Bar-Ilan University, and he is on our think tank of the Center for World Mass Media about the two-state solution. Yeah.
So there were three ideas that he postulated that I want to run past you. The first one I think is well, I'll go to that one last. One was he talked to some students at York University, which is very, very anti-Israel, and they were having their Israel Apartheid Week, he said, you know, you should put a petition to school to have a Palestinian Apartheid Week and highlight all the ways, as you mentioned, that the Palestinians were for apartheid. But the students were too afraid of their grades because the professors there are also to the left. But to me, we should be offensive rather than defensive. The second thing...
That's exactly what I certainly agree with you.
And the second thing he proposed, which he said would only take like $20 million, would be have what the U.S., I don't know if they still have the Voice of America, and have it beamed in Farsi, in English, and in Arabic. And I personally would add Spanish. And telling the truth about Israel beamed throughout the world. And the third thing he said, which was the most controversial, I think he said, a lot of his talked about Arabic tribalism, where really their allegiances to their clan. And he knew which clans were in Hebron, in Tulkarm, in Bethlehem. Each place had maximum 5 clans, some of them just 1 clan. And he thought that they should be what he called, and has on his website, Palestinian Emirates. His website is PalestinianEmirates.com. And they should be like city-states, run by their clan, and the rest of the West Bank should be Israeli.
Should be Israeli.
Yeah. What do you think, Buzz?
Well, actually, the think tank hasn't come to a conclusion yet, but I certainly agree that the West Bank or the Judea and Samaria should be annexed to Israel. And this is the only way to get out of this situation, because any other way is going to lead us to wars for another 1,000 years.
I have the microphone. When you're at war, you have to define your enemy, and no one in the world will define this enemy, and it's the Quran. That's what it is. And no one has the guts or the wherewithal to, because that's what these people believe. And the world likes to look at the Islamics the way they would like them to be, and not the way they are. So, do you have a comment on that?
You know, I had once a discussion with the Imam of Jericho. And I told him, I read the Quran. By the way, the Quran is a copy of the Bible, a bad copy. Yeah. You have the story of Joseph, you have the story of... You read that? Yeah. We have the story of Joseph, but it's not the story of Joseph. It's like the story of somebody who told the story to Muhammad who wrote it. In other words, it's hearsay. Therefore, it is not exact. It does not coincide very much with the Bible. The story is there. And I said, in the Quran, it says that the Jews, in the end, will come from all 4 corners of the world to their land. To Israel. I didn't say to their land, I said to Israel. And he said, no, it's impossible. So I said, open the Bible, open the Quran and see. So he was reading the Quran, and it says that they're going to come back to the land. To the land, al-ard. So I said, you know what to the land means? When I say, I'm going to Israel, I say, אני טס לארץ. I go to the land. I don't say I'm going to Israel. I go לארץ. מאיפה אתה בארץ? Where are you from the land? So I said, here you have the Quran. The Jews are going to come back. Where else will they come back to? And there was an argument until 1 o'clock in the morning with him. So everybody remained with his own opinion. But when you speak about the Quran, you can find there things where we can use for our own purpose against the ideas of the other side. Yeah.
Listening to you, it seems like it's almost too late, and we have missed so many opportunities. So I'll frame my questions as in why. Why why would we lose the opportunity to explain that Palestinian people was the product of the 6th Directorate of the KGB that started in 1962, into which the Soviet Union had invested a significant amount of money? Why have we missed the opportunity to show the world that Abu Mazen, who got his PhD from the University of Lumba in Moscow, wrote his doctoral dissertation on the invention of Holocaust? And does it play today, the fact that he was the financier of the Munich massacre of Israeli athletes? Where are we with those simple facts? You were talking about truth. These are the truths that we all know. Why didn't they play out? And why didn't we play out the fact that Palestinians were oppressed in every country that they went to? We knew that. It was a war. Everybody knew that. Why did it not work as part of our Hezbollah? Those are my rhetorical questions.
Yeah. I agree with you too. Our Hezbollah is lacking. This is a fact. And with Abu Mazen and the Holocaust, we sometimes do put that up, but not enough. We should do much more to stress the fact that he was a denier of the Holocaust and other things as well, because he was also involved in the massacre in Munich. And I would say that Abu Mazen is much worse. He's much more dangerous than the Hamas leader in Gaza, because the Hamas leader in Gaza is using force against us, and this is not being accepted in the world. What Abu Mazen is doing, he studied the Western world, and he's doing what the Western world is expecting, is understanding, and therefore he's achieving much more. The achievement of having the Palestinian state as an observant state in the United Nations is much more dangerous for us and much better for the Palestinians than anything that the Hamas did in the last 10 years.
Yes, I was just wondering, many times when I'm speaking to people to legitimize Israel,
Could you put the microphone? I hear you.
many times when I speak to people about legitimizing Israel, I always say, in human history, there's never been a country with greater legal legitimacy. So I ask you as an international expert and a lawyer, is that accurate? Because not only do they have it through force of arms, which is the average way any country acquires their property, they have it through international law with the United Nations, they have it through the Bible, they have it through history, they have it through archaeology. So I don't know of any other country in history that is as legitimate as Israel.
And what do you say?
From a legal point of view, is that, so many of the people I speak to are Jewish anti-Semites, and so it doesn't go very far. But I thought I was inaccurate.
I thought I made it quite clear that according to international law, the territories, which are named as territories, Judea and Samaria, are not occupied territories within international law. And maybe I would comment for a few. Do we have some more time?
As much time as you want.
Maybe I'll give you an example. The Supreme Court in Israel has the High Courts of Justice. It's the equivalent of the High Courts of Justice in England, where you can petition the Supreme Court, the High Courts, without having to go through the lower courts. In other words, you can go to the Supreme Court without going to the magistrates' courts and the district courts. So when the first petition after the Six-Day War in 1968 came up to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court didn't know exactly what to do with it. And you can see it from the judgment of the judges that they said, can somebody from the West Bank petition the Supreme Court, the High Courts of Justice in Israel? It's like, for example, during the occupation of Berlin, could a German in Berlin petition the Supreme Court in England, which was at that time the High Courts of Justice, could he petition the High Courts of Justice for example, the army wants to demolish his home. Is it thinkable? It was not thinkable at the time of the war, after the Second World War. So the Attorney General told the Supreme Court, we are better than the Geneva Convention. We treat the Arabs in a much higher level than the Geneva Convention. So we don't care if you apply the Geneva Convention, we have nothing to hide. That's the way it started. And then there was another case and another case, and after 10 years or 5 years, suddenly the judgment started taking into consideration that this is occupied territory and that it applies to the Geneva Convention. Now it became part of the law. But nobody really went back to do research on this, except us in Ariel, to do research on this to show that the whole idea of occupied territory started by the fact that the Attorney General of Israel said, we don't care if you apply the Geneva Convention. So there is no country in the world who has better rights over the Judea and Samaria than Israel. And I'm saying that without referring to the Balfour Declaration, which gave the British mandate a mandate over establishing a Jewish home in Palestine. So you can be quite sure about that.
And even in addition, countries develop their legitimacy through force of arms, which is generally, America did, England. So every criteria that we use for every modern nation, it seems that we have multiple layers.
Well, I have to say a few words on this. Section 2 of the Charter of the United Nations says that you cannot take land by force. That's a main thing. Except you can when it's self-defense. Then you can attack another country. But otherwise, you cannot do that, and you cannot acquire land by means of force. But that's began in 1945. So when you speak about states or countries that existed before 1945, then this Section 2 did not exist at that time. So at the moment, you cannot say, look, Britain took Falkland in 200 years ago, and therefore what are you coming to us for? But we have a solid argument by saying that this land was promised to the Jewish people and got the international confirmation on this, and this is what we're talking about.
Well, I have a few quick observations I want to make quickly, and I'd like your comments on them. But a couple of things. First of all, it's not too late. It's not at all too late. Now is the time to act. And if you're saying that Ariel University wants to start doing what Israel should have been doing, which is really being concerned about public relations, Hosanna, now I'd like to make a few suggestions for you, and I'd like your comments on it. More dollars for it, that's fine. Yes, it's a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of apostate Jews against it. Those are the problems, we got to get over it. I watch Israeli news on TV. The other day there was a story about a hospital in Israel. An Arab Palestinian child, a Christian Palestinian child, a Jewish child, and a Christian non-Palestinian child were all born in the same hospital. One night, I think they might have been twins. This was amazing news on Israeli TV. Who heard about it? This would have been amazing news. I mean, it's good to talk about legalities, but this is what moves people. The baby sitting there, the mothers holding the babies in an Israeli hospital. I hope that Ariel University can start getting that picture out on billboards and to Fox News, and so everybody can see it. I understand that the Baha'i faith was hounded out of Iran and now resides in Israel. Right. How come nobody knows about that? But the Baha'i, talk to some Baha'is in Israel, let them start doing interviews on Fox News. Thank God Israel is here, that we can live here. You know, whatever you think about gays or gay rights, Tel Aviv was recently voted the most gay-friendly city in the world over Miami or San Francisco or Rio de Janeiro. I think a lot of gay people who are like, so leftists might think about it a little bit if they knew what Tel Aviv was like. So I'm saying I applaud you. I would like to see that these stories get out, because we can win the world over. Israel has a lot of stories to get out.
I wish I could be persuaded by your logic. But I'm with Doris. I'm afraid that I remember, and I'm sure most of you remember, in 1967, where Abba Eban held off the entire world at the United Nations. Why can't that happen again? What happened to us between then and now? I mean, I could go on and I could lecture about it as to why it happened. I want you to tell us what has happened in the progression in those, how many, 40 some odd years? 40, it's been longer than that. Right. Why have we fallen so far from where we were? Is it simply that we survived and we beat their asses to a pulp? And the world can't stand the idea of Jews beating up on some other people? And are you addressing this? Do you have a real plan? Steven Spielberg, enlist him. He made Schindler's List, which do we have any data on what we might have to do to change these anti-Semitic attitudes, because they're killing us? We are getting killed in the court of public opinion, and I'm sorry, but it is anti-Semitism, pure and simple.
After the Six-Day War, Israel was thought to be the second or the third power in the world. There were all sorts of stories about Johnson asking Moshe Dayan, how can we stop the war in Vietnam? Or can you stop the war in Vietnam? And he said, in how many hours do you want me to do that? I can tell you that I was a student at the time in England, at Cambridge, and I went to Scandinavia. And when I landed it was in Sweden, in Stockholm, immediately said, oh, you're from Israel. Oh my God, you're from Israel. He started calling everybody to see an Israeli. They thought that we came from the moon. What happened was, after that, the left in Israel took control. And the control was that with fighting you don't make peace. How do you make peace? The Arabs have a great deal of pride. Therefore, the way to achieve peace is to appease them. The way to achieve peace is to bow to them. The way to achieve peace is not to win a war. Now, when the Yom Kippur War happened, we had almost a total victory over the Egyptians. We cornered the Fourth Army, and we could have taken 80,000 soldiers, prisoners, and the whole thing of the whole war would have changed. Kissinger said, no, you have to let go. And he caused a situation of a takeover, of a situation whereby nobody wins. And then suddenly Sadat comes over and says, I want peace with you. And this strengthened even more the claim of the left. They said, look, you see what happened. When you don't win a war, then you get peace. Since 1967, we did not win any war. There was never a war like the 1967 war, or 1956 war, or the 1948 war, where there was a total victory. There was none of this. Because they always believed that if you show that you are not winning the war, then you are not going to affect their pride, because their pride is very important. And this is carrying on until today. Unfortunately, this is what we want to change. I say that there is a switch, you have to just change it. And this change means that we have to convince the public with a lot of data and work and research, and also mostly PR, to show that this path is not going to lead anywhere. It's going to lead to a cul-de-sac, or it's going to lead to the abyss.
The world public, not just Israeli public, the world public.
We don't, number one, we don't listen to the advice of our elders. Shamir said early on, never negotiate with Arafat. And nobody listened. The real question today is that you have a great program, but you have to go after the messengers. And the messengers are the Associated Press, which is anti-Israel, and the news rooms of the major networks, other than Fox News, are anti-Israel. Until you get the thought processes of the leadership, we had during the thing in Gaza, the Federation said, why don't we go after the policymakers of the Los Angeles Times in terms of what they're writing? You've got to get to the top, bring economic pressure on those particular groups to change their policy, because 80% of the news that comes out of the Associated Press. And until you've got all the ammunition, there's no question about that. But you've got to have a plan to get the higher-ups to put the pressure on the policymakers to get those messages and the thing that he's talking about published to the world.
Yes, that's right. If you show that there are distortions in the press, that's the biggest weapon you have. If you say the press is anti-Israel, they'll say, okay, well, it's anti-Israel, because Israel, the press is showing a mirror of Israel. But when you show that the press, that particular newspaper...
But you've got to get somebody to show it.
That's what we're doing.
You know, we all know that on the West Bank, the Palestinians are teaching their children to hate Jews, to kill the Jews, the Jewish bloodsuckers, and all that stuff. Why can't we publicize and propagandize in the West Bank to counteract that? Through newspapers, through television, through people. We have a lot of good contacts on the West Bank, in Ramallah, and business associates. Why can't we establish Jewish communications, all kinds of communications, to influence the children and the parents as to the truth that you're talking about? Right?
Well, this is wishful thinking, because you cannot penetrate to their houses, mosques, families, schools. It won't work. If you try to get to their children, you will get no success. What more, that we gave them also, it was a mistake, that we wanted to give them full autonomy. So we gave them the possibility to teach their children in school with their own books. And their books say, for first grade, if a Palestinian soldier goes in the street and sees two Jews, he kills one, how many is left? That's how they teach. How they teach mathematics to children of the first grade. So you cannot penetrate that. I mean, I wish we could. We could have done something before the Oslo Agreement. I was in Gaza, but it's a long story. We could have. We had some control, but not anymore.
What about just radio, television, internet?
They don't listen to our television, they listen to their television.
I would like to share an idea that I've had for many years, and in context of what you've been speaking about, it seems rather obvious that one way to do something different would be to create centers or museums all across Europe, wherever, showcasing the contributions of Israelis and Jews. Most people have no idea that everything they touch had a Jewish head in it. And I don't know why this idea is not promoted. Have you heard anything about it, or would you take this idea back with you?
Museums? What sort of museums?
A center where people would go in and they would see medical, all the medical contributions, music, arts, everything. mechanics. I mean, there's no end to it, and people don't, the science, people have no idea that an aspirin came from a Jew, and everything they touch, their cell phones, their electronics, are coming out of Israel.
I would say it's a wonderful idea.
So take it back and do something.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
I have told so many people that have any kind of prestige and it goes nowhere, so I'm sharing it with you.
I shall try to see, it's a wonderful approach. Maybe it's the only museum in the world which shows this.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Israel. 4 days ago, I put in a wonderful new irrigation machine that turns on and off the water automatically with a 6-volt battery, made and invented in Israel. So thank you for that. And I'm going to ask a question. Second thing I want to do, we're a people, there are optimists, there are negative people. One of the things I'd like to appreciate is, unfortunately in my lifetime, 4.5 out of the 6 million Jews decided that they don't like Israel that much. On the other hand, 100 million Christian people decided all of a sudden that Israel was a wonderful thing. So when we count our friends, the miracle that in my lifetime, the fundamentalist Christians were considered as a young man somebody to stay away from and scary, and now they're our best friends. And finally, a question. As a member of Likud, I watch with horror our very Israel-challenged president and his incoming Secretary of Defense. And as a member of Likud, what is the state of mind of our Prime Minister, who is a Likud member, as he deals with trying to protect and care for Israel? What is his state of mind? What is he thinking as he tries to carry on? Thank you.
What do you mean by coup?
Likud.
Coup? Oh, Likud. Well, I think that Netanyahu has a very strong Zionist background. I've seen Ehud Olmert. I know him personally very well. He comes from a staunch Zionist family, and suddenly he went to the other side. You see Shimon Peres, who was, I would say, the strong right-wing person in the Mapai government. He brought to Israel the atom energy. He brought to Israel quite a lot of things. He was the CEO of the Ministry of Defense when he was only 30 years old, and he suddenly went to the other side. And he, sorry?
He was always on the other side. He and Moshe Dayan were leftists. And I told you
yeah. Well, but when he was close to Ben-Gurion, he was more right than the Likud today.
It was his job.
Okay. Anyway, but what does Netanyahu think and feel? I think that Netanyahu has a gun over his forehead, telling him, first of all, you have to agree to accept the two-state solution, because Netanyahu, if you remember, did not want to accept that, to confirm that. It took him a month and a half after he was prime minister until he said the word, okay, but under certain conditions. There is no such thing as conditions. You cannot have a state under conditions. But he said that, and he said, okay, I accept that. As a prime minister, he cannot go back on his word, because then the whole world will be against Israel. He's taking a very precautious way. On the other hand, I think he's a staunch Zionist, and I think he will leaving out settlements or going back on settlements will not happen again as it happened in Gush Katif.
Okay, I have something to say, to ask you. Whenever we see any politicians talking on TV, Israelis and Americans, we never see them talking about why we got to that situation. They always say occupied and all this kind of stuff, but we were really pushed to the wall. I mean, we did not start the Six-Day War, and thanks God we won it, and we created a new situation. How can your organization explain to those politicians that are talking in the media to explain before they talk why we got to this situation? Many people don't know.
Even the 48 war, too.
Right, right. And the other thing I wanted, how did we get to what situation? To be occupiers, you know, we won the war, it's our land. And you know, many times when I talk to people about it, to non-Jewish people, I tell them, you know, when you go to Vegas, you feel you're going to put that money in the machine, you know you're going to win, and you lost it. Can you go back to the house and ask for your money? I mean, they lost the war.
So, you know, you're perfectly right. This is one of the things I told the Minister of Education in Israel. You know, the previous Minister of Education was Yuli Tamir. I don't know whether you are acquainted with her. She decided, she's from Shalom Achshav, from Peace Now. She decided that the students should learn about the Nakba and about the Green Line. She put it into the books of the students. And when Gideon Saar became Minister of Education, he abolished that. And I told him, you're making a big mistake by abolishing it. I want everybody to study the Nakba. And he said, why? I said, you must teach the Nakba as it was. The Nakba was that they wanted to kill us, and they got hit by a bank. That's the Nakba. So what they are doing is that they are crying or speaking about their problems because they did not succeed to kill the Jews. They did not succeed to throw the Jews to the sea. That's the Nakba. Not that they had trouble, they had problems. The Nakba was that they tried to kill another nation and they couldn't succeed. That's the Nakba. That's the way we should teach them also, the Arabs in the Arab villages. That's what happened. So I agree with him. We should explain the fact that the Six-Day War was forced upon us, not that we wanted to do it. Of course.
We have two more questions and then we really...
Yeah, okay, two more, yeah.
Okay. First of all, Professor, thank you very much for the work you're doing. Appreciate it. We need that a lot. Thank you. Joanne Rader is a Newsweek reporter in 1984, published a book called From Time Immemorial.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people know about this. Those who I highly recommend you read that. It's From Time Immemorial, and it basically discredited the whole Palestinian claim. 1984. I couldn't put it down. And talked about the population exchange, India and Pakistan, Muslims and Hindus, about 6 million, 8 million. And use that as an example that took place in 1964, by the way. In 1995, Netanyahu wrote a book, A Place Under the Sun. It's all laid out really well. The truth is out there. And what is it, the strategy that you will be using under your umbrella right now to make this truth more effective? Because I'm sure the administration knows about this truth, and it's still, you know, making certain decisions. What is it that can be done different to get this out there to make the effect? Because do people really care about the truth once you get it out there? And that's the challenge that you're posing. Okay.
The book From Time Immemorial is a must. It's a fantastic book. It's a woman who came over to the Middle East. She's an American. She knew very little about the conflict. She wanted to investigate the conflict. She came with the idea that the Israelis were the culprits. that the Israelis were to blame. And the more she went into the depth, the more research she did, the more she found out that the whole strategy of the Arabs is false. There is nothing to it. And she came over and said, and she researched into this, I mean, it's an academic work. She showed that 200 years ago, there were hardly any Arabs in Palestine.
Right.
And these Arabs who came with the Jewish immigration, the first Jewish immigration, because the Jews needed workers. And the Arabs came from Syria and came from Egypt and came from many other places, even from Russia. They came over, Muslims from Russia came, not from Russia, from the Soviet Union, but used to be the Soviet Union. They came over to that area to find work. And what happened with the refugee problem is that the United Nations decided that every person who lived in Palestine 2 years before 1948 is considered a refugee. Why did they do that? Because many of them did not live there more than 2 years. So this book is fantastic, and by the way, I teach this book, or parts of it, in my classes. It's a wonderful book, and it's well documented, and it's a book that has, you should take from them the gist of the book and try to spread it as much as possible to as much as people as you can. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, what's the common denominator of that causes them to create such lies from workers, etc.? Is it the Jews are Dini people? Is it that they don't like the way they treat the women? Is it that whatever, once land has been owned by an Arab, or it's always got to be an Arab? What's the real common denominator in your opinion?
Well, I would say that the Arabs as a whole, countries, politicians, never tell the truth. Never tell the truth. This was detrimental to themselves in many wars. You know that when the American forces were in the outskirts of Baghdad, Deputy President, I don't remember his name, he was saying that they were winning the war. Do you remember that? They were saying that they were winning the war, and you see on television that the American troops were already in Baghdad, and he was saying that they're not there. In the 6-Day War, the Egyptians told Hussein, Nasser told Hussein on the phone, and they publicized that the Egyptian troops are on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. This is a part of life. To tell you something that is imaginary, they even don't see it as a lie. It's imaginary. Now, when they say that they are descendants of the Philistines, that the Jews had nothing to do in Jerusalem, that they try to take away everything that is Jewish in Mount Temple, that they spread lies about atrocities that are being done to the Arabs, when the facts are that a Muslim woman in Hadassah Hospital gets exactly the same treatment as the wife of a general in the Israeli army. And still you have these inaccurate facts or lies that are spread all around. So the common denominator with the Arabs is that they don't tell the truth. That's period. And they use it also when it's according to their interest.
Abe, thank you very much. Thank you.